When the United States entered the First World War, the military had a glaring problem. American pilots heading into the brutal dogfights over Europe were forced to fly French and British aircraft. The U.S. aviation industry was practically non-existent. This failure happened a mere 14 years after the airplane was invented, right on American soil. The stagnation had a specific internal cause. Over the preceding decade, the very inventors of the airplane had systematically sued nearly anyone attempting to manufacture aircraft in the United States. Wilbur and Orville Wright are celebrated as heroic inventors, but a closer look reveals men wholly obsessed with controlling every variable in their environment. The exact psychological trait that allowed the brothers to conquer the physics of flight, absolute control, is the same trait that ultimately choked the American aviation industry. The brothers approached flight through the lens of their day job. As bicycle mechanics, they knew a machine had to be balanced to function. They saw flight as a mechanical problem that required isolating individual variables. They needed a perfectly controlled testing environment. To find it, they requested data from the National Weather Bureau to locate the optimal weather conditions on the East Coast. The data pointed them to a narrow sandbar separating the Albemarle Sound from the Atlantic, Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. It offered a steady, constant wind, soft sand for inevitable hard landings, and a landscape completely free of hills or trees that could disrupt airflow. At the time, other early aviators were focused heavily on building powerful engines and generating massive lift. That brute force approach frequently resulted in fatal, uncontrolled crashes. They recognized that getting into the air was only the first hurdle. To stay there, the pilot needed a dedicated mechanism to actively manage the machine's balance against the wind. Their defining engineering breakthrough was a concept called wing warping. By twisting the wing's structural edges, the pilot could bank left or right, achieving lateral control. Tested on early unpowered gliders, this mechanic established the direct technological lineage for the rigid ailerons on modern aircraft. Applying motor power in December 1903 introduced new mechanical failures. The jerking of the propellers repeatedly loosened the engine's sprockets. True to their background, they fixed the problem using a heavy-duty, hard cement normally used to repair bicycles. During the first powered test on December 17th, Orville struggled to balance the machine. The front rudder was highly sensitive, causing the aircraft to dart wildly up and down before hitting the ground after just 12 seconds. They made repairs and kept testing. By the fourth and final trial of the day, Wilbur managed a fairly even course, keeping the machine airborne for 59 seconds and covering 852 feet. Ultimately, the trials of December 17th proved that a powered, heavier-than-air machine can be sustained and directed through continuous human control. Once they achieved powered flight, the brothers' focus shifted. Their obsession with controlling the aerodynamics of the machine turned into an obsession with securing total legal ownership over the concept of flight itself. To protect the patent they finally secured in 1906, the Wrights operated in intense secrecy. They refused to fly publicly and actively avoided press coverage of their tests. This vacuum of public proof left the door open for competitors. In October 1906, Alberto Santos Dumont executed the first certified, highly public-powered flight in Europe. Because Santos Dumont took off unassisted and in front of a massive crowd in Paris, European aeronautic societies and his native Brazilians immediately hailed him as the true inventor of the airplane. The Wrights' hypervigilance and refusal to share their data publicly created a debate over historical legitimacy. They were forced onto the defensive, fighting to prove they were actually the first to fly. The brothers retaliated with aggressive legal action, initiating what became known as the Airplane Patent Wars. They targeted rival American aviators, most notably Glenn Curtiss. Their legal argument was vast in scope. They claimed their 1906 patent covered any mechanism of lateral control, whether it used their wing warping technique or Curtiss's ailerons, and they demanded royalties from virtually every airplane builder. This had a paralyzing effect. American aviation innovation froze as designers stopped building aircraft, terrified of being bankrupted by crippling lawsuits. The legal gridlock only broke when the United States entered the First World War. The U.S. government stepped in and forced the creation of a patent pool, simply so domestic manufacturers could legally build planes for the military. Orville Wright's demand for control extended well past his death. The executors of his estate finalized a contract with the Smithsonian Institution in 1948, legally forcing the museum to forfeit the original Wright Flyer if it ever displays a claim that any other aircraft was capable of controlled flight first. The uncompromising writ of control that allowed the Wright brothers to tame the wind and achieve flight is the same force that ultimately suffocated the very industry they brought to life.